My name is Mark Benty, and I'm the Executive Director for the Earthquake Country Alliance. And this is ECA Central Coast webinar called Tsunamis, Information, Inspiration, and Preparedness. ECA is a statewide partnership with public and private and grassroots leaders from all parts of the state that work together in committees on different topics and sectors and regional alliances. We get funding from California Office of Emergency Services and are headquartered at USC, and we encourage you to join us at earthquakecountry.org/join if you found out about this through perhaps other sources, not directly from an email from us, which if would mean that you're already a member if you got it directly from us. The funding is from the National Earthquake Hazard Reduction Program, which is a partnership of 4 federal agencies that work together to make sure we're safer for earthquakes. And the California Office of Emergency Services requests funding from FEMA for that program, that is then provided to USC, where we're headquartered at the Southern California Earthquake Center and administer ECA's activities. So that's just kind of a sense of that this is everybody working together to make these types of activities happen for us in California. And we really appreciate that support. We lead activities statewide, our websites. We coordinate and help promote Tsunami Preparedness Week, which is next week. So this is a very timely webinar. And we also created and coordinate the Shakeout this year, coming up on October 20th. So you'll be hearing a lot about Shakeout coming up as we move into the next month here. There are different committees you can be a part of, and if you are a member of one of these sectors and would like to be involved, go to earthquakecountry.org/committees to find out how. We also have outreach bureaus, and one in particular, our events bureau. If you're looking for a presenter or an information table, now that we're able to, for some window of time here, come to events, you can make that request at earthquakecountry.org/events. We also, if you're a public information officer or others who work with the news media, we have a media bureau, and we have others who are helping to promote registration in both Tsunami Week and Shakeout. Okay, and then finally, just to highlight that we also do now have updated materials in 15 languages, which you can find at earthquakecountry.org/languages. With that, I'd like to introduce our chairs for the ECA Central Coast, which is the newest region of ECA. And we're very excited that they have taken on these roles to help build out the alliance for the region and bring more people in to help organize everything and to have more events like this. I'll turn it over to you all.
Hello, everyone. My name is Anthony Rodriguez, and I'm the Operations and Disaster Services Specialist for the Foodbank of Santa Barbara County.
Good morning, everybody. Happy to be here today. My name is Stacy Silva. I'm an emergency manager for Santa Barbara County's Office of Emergency Management, and excited to be a part of the Earthquake Country Alliance Central Coast.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ethan Walker. I'm the Regional Disaster Prevention and Preparedness Manager for the Red Cross in Central California. Glad to be here today, too.
All right. So we're very excited to have all of you join us this morning. And as Mark mentioned, we are looking at building our Earthquake Country Alliance Central Coast chapter. I know we have people here from throughout the state. So if you are local, we would love to have you join us. Just a reminder, a couple announcements. You can view our 2020 Central Coast Earthquake webinar. So today we're focused on tsunamis, but we did have a webinar that was focused on earthquakes in 2020 at our website. And we would love for you to help us spread the word to others throughout Central California and join us. Our group is pretty small right now, and we would really like to build that and build those partnerships in blue skies, so that in the event we do have one of these major earthquakes or a large tsunami, we're already connected and we're already able to work together. And of course, as we are a small group right now, we are looking at building our committee. And so we are looking for volunteers to step up and serve on the ECA Central Coast Coordinating Committee, help us get the information out there, create events, develop resources. And if you are in the Central Coast region and you are interested in doing that, please email Sharon. Her email is there on in the chat, sandow@usc.edu. We would love to have your help. And thanks again for being here.
All right, well, we got some really great presenters today. Today we have Yvette LaDuke from the Earthquake, Tsunami, and Volcano Programs Manager of the California Office of Emergency Management, Emergency Services. And we also have Nick Grail, the Engineering Geologist, California Geological Survey. So today we're gonna go with Yvette LaDuke. She is the Earthquake, Tsunami, and Volcano Programs Manager for the California Office of Emergency Services. And she will be speaking about tsunami preparedness as well. Tsunami Preparedness Week, and as well, she will be sharing updates on the most recent tsunami. Yvette, take it away.
Thank you so much. And again, my name is Yvette LaDuke, and I'm the manager for the Earthquake, Tsunami, and Volcano Program at the California Office of Emergency Services. And I'm here today with our partner, Nick Grail. He works for the California Geological Survey. Our state tsunami program is a partnership of our two programs. So our office is the emergency management portion of our state program. And then Nick at the California Geological Survey, they are our science partners in the statewide program. So many of us have heard a lot about tsunamis. So I'm going to talk to you today a little bit more about what tsunamis are, how they impact us, how we find out if they're going to impact our coast, and then how we can be prepared. So to start off, many of us have seen the news reports and videos of these devastating tsunamis that occur over in Indonesia and Japan, and wonder if there's a potential that they could impact our coast. So in looking at this slide here, we can see within the past 12 years, so between September of 2009 and the end of 2021, we had 6 tsunamis that impacted our coast here in California, resulting in at least an advisory level of event for us here on our coast. And I'll talk to you a little bit more in a couple slides about what an advisory level event means. But the most recent event was Alaska, January of 2018. We were put in a tsunami advisory due to an earthquake that happened off the coast of the Alaska Aleutian Islands and had some impacts to our marina and harbor areas here on the coast. The most devastating of these events was the March 2011 tsunami that originated from an earthquake that occurred off the coast of Japan, traveled across the Pacific Ocean, and caused about $100 million damage to our coast here in California. So on the next slide, we're going to play a video for you. And this video will show some of the impacts that occurred to Santa Cruz Harbor during that March 2011 event. So if you could go ahead and play the video.
Everybody on the bridge screaming wave. Here it comes. Oh my God. There's nothing anybody can do. Not even that. If something's going to happen. These are huge waves. Right where we were standing? Yeah, we were right there. Standing right there. Oh my God. Yeah, I'm glad we were gone. Oh my God, Cindy. Oh my God, Cindy. Can you hear it? Can you hear it? Oh my God. Okay. Oh, Jesus Christ.
Okay, so you can go ahead and go to the next slide. As you can see, even though that event started in Japan, it still had enough energy to create that kind of damage here on our coast of California. So even though it originated from a distant source, it can still be very devastating here in California. So as I mentioned, we had those 6 events through the end of 2021 here in California. So in January, a couple months ago, this actually changed, and we had an additional tsunami that originated from a volcanic eruption that occurred beneath the ocean surface near the island of Tonga. This was actually the first volcanic event we had that actually created a tsunami that traveled across the entire Pacific Ocean. So back when the volcanic eruption first occurred on Friday, January 14th in the evening, officials were watching this event. We had limited equipment in the areas, so it took a while for them to actually be able to track the event to see what types of impacts it was having in the South Pacific, but there was no indication that this was going to impact us here in California. However, as our tsunami warning centers kept monitoring this event and impacts started to reach Hawaii, they realized that this was a much larger event than our first data led us to believe. So at that point, about 3:26 on Saturday, the 15th in the morning, the National Tsunami Warning Center in Alaska issued a notification to us here on the West Coast that the volcanic eruption had occurred and that they are monitoring our coast for the potential for this to impact us here in California. About an hour and a half later, at 4:56 in the morning, the National Tsunami Warning Center did issue a tsunami advisory for the California coast because at that time they were able to determine that there were going to be some impacts to our marina and harbor areas in our immediate coastline. And then tsunami surges began to arrive on our coast between 7 and 7:30 that morning. We had tsunami impacts throughout the day, and the advisory was finally canceled at about 12:30 in the morning on Sunday, January 16th. So on the next slide, this video actually shows you a little bit more about the impacts from that event. So go ahead and play this video, please.
Large waves slammed ashore up and down the U.S. West Coast Saturday after a volcanic eruption in the South Pacific Ocean caused a tsunami. This person in Pacifica, California, was doing what officials warned people not to: stay away from coastal shorelines due to the danger of being swept away. And that's exactly what happened to two people fishing on the coast west of San Jose. Both were taken to the hospital. In Santa Cruz, water flowed into streets after rising in the city's harbor. One of the biggest waves, 4.3 feet, was reported in Port San Luis on the Southern California coast. Large waves were also reported in Monterey, San Diego, and San Francisco, as well as parts of Oregon, Washington, and Alaska. Earlier, waves over 2 feet were reported in Hawaii. The tsunami was generated by the eruption of an undersea volcano near Tonga. There was no word on possible damage or casualties there because communications were knocked out to the Pacific island nation.
Okay, you can go ahead to the next slide. Thank you. So the photo in the upper left corner of this slide is actually a snapshot from the video that we just saw showing some of the flooding and damage that occurred on Tonga. The rest of the photos on this slide show flooding and damage that we experienced here in California. And as you can see, especially in that lower right corner, we did have some pretty significant flooding on land from this event, and Nick will talk a little bit more about it in his slides, but we had some unusual flooding from this because this tsunami happened to occur at high tide. So we had our high tide conditions with the tsunami surge on top of it, which caused a little more flooding than we would usually expect from an advisory level event. The slide in the lower left corner shows a gentleman, he's actually a surfer that had gone out into the ocean during the tsunami waves and is actually in distress in this photo and had to end up being rescued by first responders. So it just really illustrates the danger that tsunamis can create. And not only was someone in peril out in the water, but then the first responders had to risk their lives as well to go out in the water to do the rescues. So really dangerous situation, which is why we really encourage all of our partners, our local partners, and everyone to make sure that the communication gets out, and we encourage folks to stay out of the water. Next slide. So we know about these tsunamis that have impacted our coast. How can we find out if a tsunami is coming and what its impacts will be to us here in California? So next slide. So we received two different types of tsunamis. The ones that we've been talking about are what we consider distant source tsunamis, meaning that they occur based on an event that happens from a distant shore. So earthquakes or volcanoes that happen across the Pacific and travel through the water to impact our coast. We also had a local tsunami threat, which means that these are tsunamis that are generated from a source that's in or very near to California's shoreline area. So some examples of this would be the Cascadia subduction zone, which is located off of our north coast. And we do have some additional earthquake faults that are located offshore in central and southern California that could generate a local tsunami. So it's very important to keep in mind the natural warning signs, because in those cases, there will not be time for official notification. So we need to pay attention to a strong, prolonged shaking, a couple minutes of really strong shaking, an unusual receding of the water exposing the seafloor. So not the general tidal conditions that you normally see when you visit the beach, but this long drawn out exposure of the seafloor, or an unusual loud ocean roaring sound. So it would sound different from the normal wave activity that you hear when you visit the water. It would be a very distinct roar. So if any or all of these signs occur, folks need to be aware that they need to move to high ground as soon as possible, because they will only have minutes to respond. Next slide. So again, we show our triad, which shows the drop, cover, hold on, and people think, well, if I'm at the beach and I feel this long shaking, why do I need to do that? The important thing to remember is many folks may not be able to walk steadily if there is strong shaking going on. And if you fall and injure yourself, you will not be able to evacuate for the tsunami. So if the shaking is so strong that you are unable to walk safely, we encourage you to do your drop, wait until the strong shaking stops, and then immediately evacuate. Next slide. So this slide here shows the different alert levels for tsunamis that will be provided by the National Tsunami Warning Center. So if you look at the second ribbon down, the orange ribbon that says advisory, this is the level that the National Tsunami Warning Center used for the Tonga event that just occurred. So as you see, it shows that if you go across that orange banner, it shows strong currents and dangerous waves, which is what we did indeed experience during the Tonga event. Worst case scenario will be a warning level, which is in that top red banner, which means we are going to have flooding on land, and there will be some evacuations imposed on our coastal areas. So it's important to know also on these that the National Weather Service will issue a wireless emergency alert, or a WEA, to folks in the counties where a warning level event is put in place. And again, those WEAs will go to the residents of that entire county. So next slide. So this is a flow chart that just shows our basic response protocol here in California. So at the top is the National Tsunami Warning Center, which is a part of the National Weather Service located in Alaska. If there is a tsunami event that's going to impact our coast, they will immediately implement this notification process, which simultaneously goes to National Weather Service offices here in our state. They will activate the emergency alert system, broadcast TV, radio, NOAA weather radio, sirens, and all of the alert notification protocols they have in place to reach the public. While that is happening, our state warning center here in California, which is a part of our agency, will receive that notification, which will then be distributed out to our county warning points, County Office of Emergency Services, and then they will initiate notification protocols within the counties. So next slide. So we've talked a little bit about how you can get notified and how our official notification process works. So what can you do? So there's 3 steps. Be informed, which is what you're doing today, which is a great first step. be prepared, and get involved. 3 key things to do for any disaster, not just tsunamis. So next slide. So here are some ways you can find out if you are in a tsunami hazard area. So there's 3 key websites you can visit: the myhazards.caloes.ca.gov. You can go on that website, type in your address, and it will provide you information with any hazard that is associated with that address. So it might be in a flood zone, a fire hazard zone, liquefaction, or tsunami zone. Tsunamizone.org is our big website that we use for our program. It has all of our resources on it, and also has links to the MyHazard website and the tsunami.ca.gov website. The tsunami.ca.gov website is our state tsunami program website, which houses all of the tsunami hazard maps and information on it. And Nick will provide you some more information on what's available on that website during his presentation. Next slide. So here also, you can sign up to receive notifications. So if you have a Twitter account, you can go on to your Twitter account and set up your notifications to receive alerts from the National Tsunami Warning Center when there are tsunami notifications sent out. You can also sign up for the Facebook to be a Facebook member with the National Tsunami Warning Center. And I also list the earthquake.ca.gov website on here because you can go on there and download the MyShake app to your phone. And this will provide you with earthquake alerts for those local source events that we talked about a couple slides ago. So if you get those notifications for earthquakes and you're near the coast, you know that there could potentially be a tsunami associated with that as well, depending on size and location of the earthquake. So very important also to sign up to receive emergency alert notifications from your local city or county emergency management officials. Those officials are the folks that will provide you with specific information to your location on what you need to do should you need to evacuate. Next slide. So here's another way that you can find out if you are in a tsunami hazard zone. All of our counties here in California have tsunami signage up in their coastal areas. This notifies the public if they're entering or leaving a tsunami hazard area, and also provides evacuation route information with arrows to direct them which way local officials would like for the public to go if they need to evacuate for a tsunami. Next slide. Another tool that we use are our tsunami evacuation maps, and many of our county partners here in California have these maps posted in their highly visited beach locations. As you can see, the map in the center is going to be posted in Carpentry Estate Beach. We're just finishing up on the kiosk structures for this, so they're not quite posted yet, but are coming shortly within the next month. And as you can see on the left and right of that map, we have wall-mounted structures and freestanding kiosks that provide beachgoers with information regarding where that hazard area is. And in blue with those arrows, you can see the evacuation route to get out of the area if they need to evacuate. Another great piece of information on these maps in the lower right corner is a Get Connected section, which provides information on how people can sign up to receive local alert and warning information. Next slide. So the third thing you can do after you get informed is to get prepared. So getting prepared is very important. On this slide, it shows the basic items that you want to have for any disaster: earthquake, tsunami, fire, flood, your go kit, having a family emergency plan, also emergency contact card. It's very important to have this in writing as well as on your phones, because if your phone's dying, you don't have a way to charge them, you're going to need the old paper and pen information available. And then also on the right side, you see a photograph of a solar powered radio. Good to have those on hand in case you don't have electricity, and it's a good way to get some information. Next slide. So next, get involved. So we've talked about getting informed, getting prepared. Another important step is to get involved. Get involved in a tsunami walk in your community, especially if you live or work or frequent a tsunami hazard area. It's important to do the actual physical walks so that folks build in that muscle memory and have that memory of what to do if they do need to evacuate out of a tsunami hazard area. And on the tsunamizone.org website, we have a lot of resources on how to put together a tsunami evacuation drill / tsunami walk, and also some videos. So we encourage you to go on that site, download those resources, use them, change them, whatever you need to do, those are there and available for you to use. And again, we really encourage you to use them and to do a drill. If you're concerned about getting folks together, you can do them yourself with your family, and just get out and get involved and get prepared. Very important again to do this. Next slide. So we've designated March 21st through 25th as Tsunami Preparedness Week. However, you do not have to do your activities during this week. We encourage you to do tsunami preparedness activities throughout the year, but we designate this week as a big time to highlight our tsunami hazard. And as you're aware, we did just have a tsunami advisory 2 months ago. So a really good reminder that they do impact our coast, that we do need to be ready for them, and we do need to know what to do if a tsunami is going to impact our coast. So we encourage you to go again on the tsunamizone.org website. Sign up if you're going to do an activity. It doesn't even need to be an evacuation drill. It can be, an informational briefing. It can be, talking to your school, talking to your neighborhood council, any type of event, getting neighbors together and talking informally. But we encourage you to go on this site and register what activities you're doing so that other folks can see what you're doing and maybe get some ideas on what they can do in their community. Next slide. So this card lists the websites that are associated with our statewide tsunami program. This certainly isn't all of them, but we listed 6 sites here that have some really good information and resources that you can use to help get prepared and to get information on tsunamis. Next slide. So this is some contact information for my program. So myself, Matt, and Todd, we're all with the California Office of Emergency Services. And then we have Rick and Nick who work for the Geological Survey or conservation.ca.gov. They again are our science partners. And then we have Brian Garcia who works with Eric Bold. So I know both of them work with the Central Coast folks there. So you can contact Brian or Eric at the National Weather Service if you have questions regarding tsunamis and their role in our response process. I think that's it for me, unless anybody has any questions, or we can move on to Nick.
Thank you so much, Yvette, for not only being here today, but sharing your breadth of knowledge with us. We appreciate all of your support and expertise throughout the state of California, especially here on the Central Coast. I do believe we have a couple of questions in our Q&A area. And just a reminder to our webinar attendees, if you do have questions, please feel free to use the Q&A option, which is located usually down at the bottom next to your chat button. So Sharon, did you want to ask those questions?
Absolutely, thanks. Steve asks, I understand height of waves is not the issue many times. The length is to be the concerning factor. Is there ways to know this through the alerts or other places as to the true concerns?
So Nick's going to talk to you a little bit about how we are able to calculate what the impacts are going to be to our coast here in California. We do have a calculation that we run, our partners at the Geological Survey and the National Weather Service, to determine what those impacts are. And we do communicate those out to our coastal partners during a tsunami response. So back when we talked about the duration of the Tonga event, and how we received that notification at about 4 in the morning, and we did not get the all clear until Sunday morning. It was basically a 28.5-hour event. So during that time, we're in constant communication with our state partners. And we are able to run that calculation based on data that we received from the National Tsunami Warning Center. And then we provide that data to our local partners so that you will know what that impact is going to be to your coast. And again, Nick can tell you how we make that determination and how that's calculated. The one thing I do want to note for the Tonga event is we were unable to run that calculation because the data and the equipment that reads the data was set up for a seismic event, so an earthquake-based tsunami. So since this was based on a volcanic eruption, we were unable to analyze the data quickly enough to be able to run these calculations. So I'll toss it over to Nick to provide you a little bit more information though on how we do make the determination on the both height and details of that specific tsunami event and what its impacts will be.
Thanks, Yvette. So what we could do is I could roll through my presentation, and if I don't answer it in my presentation, we could bring it up again at the end of my talk and the Q&A session there. So if that sounds good with everyone.
Great.
Great questions, by the way. Keep them coming.
One thing we do want to point out is that we do have a survey of today's webinar, and we'll put the link in the chat too, to make sure that, you know, if you're going to sign off early, please click that link, open your browser. It'll take you just a few minutes to complete that survey. Thank you.
All right, that was great. Thank you so much, Yvette. So now I'm going to introduce Nick Grail. He is an engineering geologist for the California Geological Survey, who will be presenting on tsunami science and resources. So take it away, Nick.
Hey, thanks, Anthony. Really appreciate it. And I'm excited to be here. I got some great material to share with you guys. So with that, let's go ahead and kick it off with my first slide there. So again, my name is Nick Grail. I'm an engineering geologist for the California Geological Survey. My specialty is tsunami science and guidance. I've been working on tsunamis for about a decade now, including participating in our latest post-tsunami survey for the Tonga tsunami event. Today, I'll give you a very brief overview of our tsunami response and field team observations from the January 15th Tonga event, and then we'll take a turn and discuss important tsunami hazard information that you can use for Tsunami Preparedness Week this month. Okay, let's get started. Next slide, if you would, please. So there we go. The tsunami stick figure runs by. And so like Yvette was saying earlier, we're part of the California Tsunami Program. It's a team of federal, state, and local partners. Our mission is to make California more tsunami resilient by creating tsunami hazard maps, guidance, and educational material for the general public and local officials. We work together to plan for the next tsunami. Speaking of tsunami, next slide. On the evening of January 14th this year, at approximately 8:15 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, that's Friday night, the Hunga Tonga Hunga Ha'apai volcano unleashed a violent underwater eruption that was unprecedented in modern times. Go ahead and run that video if you would there. It was one of the largest volcanic explosions of the instrumental era, and also caused shock waves that circled the globe 10 times over. The eruption generated tsunamis that traveled throughout the Pacific and was even observed in the Atlantic Ocean and Mediterranean Sea.
Nick, I didn't notice that this was a video, and it's telling me that the codec is unavailable. So that's why I didn't come up. Sorry.
No, that's
all
okay.
Your other videos work, by the way, so don't worry. Just this one.
Okay. This one I was especially excited about because it's a model that was developed by our partners at USC. And so I was just going to show in this model here that this was just a very unique and very complicated event. The model that was done by USC has a leading shock wave that was shown as a red line that propagated away from the volcanic explosion. And that shock wave traveled faster than the primary tsunami. The shock wave was relatively small and non-life threatening. The primary tsunami, it would arrive in California on the Central Coast first at around 7 a.m., with the largest tsunami surges occurring about 2 hours later, as you can see in the water level plot in the lower right. We were talking, there was a question about tsunami heights and period or wavelength. As you can see that tsunami heights do matter. And here it so happened that maximum tsunami heights occurred at the same time as peak tides. And that led to minor to moderate coastal flooding. Santa Cruz and Ventura suffered the most significant damage among California harbors. Next slide, please. So tsunami teams were deployed to key locations prior to the tsunami arrival to observe impacts in real time. Shortly after the event, additional field teams were dispatched to record local response efforts and any observable damage. We helped assist local officials by providing science and alert information to our California Tsunami Program partners. Next. Of course, the response to the Tonga tsunami event was a group effort. Jay Patton from CGS led the coordinated response to the Tonga event. Jay and Jim Falls visited sites along the north coast between Crescent City and Fort Bragg. Jackie Bont went to the Berkeley Marina to observe the tsunami in real time and visited sites in Marin County with Rick Wilson and Kate Thomas. Tyler Ladinsky observed the tsunami as it inundated the beach in Half Moon Bay. Jackie and I went to Santa Cruz and Monterey counties. Afterwards, Brian Olson, Matt Palmer from Cal OES, and I surveyed San Diego County. Mike DeFrisco, Francesca, Valencia, and Brian Olson also made observations in Ventura, Santa Barbara, Morro Bay, and Cayucas. I just wanted to give a big thank you to all the other folks that helped on the response, especially our partners at Cal OES. Next slide. So the Tonga event was an advisory level. It was smaller than 2011, Japanese tsunami, the video that Yvette played earlier, but it happened to coincide at high tide, which produced more localized flooding on beaches and in some harbors, and in particular in Santa Cruz Harbor, which was shown here on the images on the left and in the boardwalk on the right. Next. With the help of CGS's GIS and web teams, we were able to successfully set up and collect information for our informal clearinghouse. We used the clearinghouse to consolidate all of our field observations and to help develop technical reports and summaries of this event. Next. So in summary, we had, California had approximately $8 to $10 million of damage to harbor infrastructure, boats, and vehicles. We learned important lessons from this event, including how to improve our early alert messaging, the need to evacuate harbors and beaches in a tsunami advisory level event, and to improve our outreach to those that live on board their boats, the liveaboards. So on the next slide, there's a quick video, a tsunami montage video showing what a tsunami from a distant source tsunami will look like. Go ahead and run that video, thanks. Berkeley, Santa Cruz, San Diego. Collecting field data, talking with local officials, recording water level elevation, working with harbor officials, observing damage, water level fluctuations as seen in the security video feed at Santa Cruz, strong tsunami-induced currents, in Ventura Harbor, where one of the harbor patrol boats capsized as it was pulled under by the strong tsunami-induced currents. And here's what it looks like in Santa Cruz as it runs into the parking lot. It's now filling over the boat basin and into the parking area. Santa Cruz has a unique geometry. There you go, some cars flooding, impacts along the Santa Cruz coast. We have to remember too that this is a smaller event, but I'm surprised to see how much damage was caused by such a small event. I'll touch on the surfing portion in just a second too. We don't want people out there surfing during a tsunami advisory. Okay, let's go to the next slide here. So if you want to learn more about the Tonga tsunami and our state's response to the tsunami, you could go to our state tsunami website at tsunami.ca.gov, and there's a graphic card there that you could click on to learn more about that. Now let's turn our attention to the state tsunami hazard area maps for emergency response planning. These are to know your zone. You could check out the latest tsunami hazard maps for evacuation planning on our state website. These are the tsunami maps are the basics of tsunami hazard mitigation planning and public awareness. We need to know what areas are at risk, what areas are safe, and we need to communicate that information to those who work, live, or visit a tsunami hazard area. Next. So we recommend to avoid harm from a tsunami, you want to move outside of the tsunami hazard area. Sometimes evacuation takes longer than expected, so it's a good idea to evacuate without delay. These tsunami hazard area maps that were created by the California Geological Survey show where science suggests that tsunami waves may flood on land. These maps are based on a suite of very large and realistic tsunami scenarios where people in coastal communities should evacuate from during large events. Now you can go to the next slide, please. So most tsunamis are caused by large earthquakes below the ocean floor, but they can also be caused by volcanic activity like Tonga, landslides, certain types of weather, and asteroids or comets that impact the Earth's surface. Tsunamis are one of the most destructive forces in nature. Even small tsunamis can be dangerous, especially to swimmers, surfers, and boats in harbors. And tsunamis are not just a single wave, and they could last for hours. Next slide. So what does a tsunami look like? There's a lot of misconceptions about what tsunamis look like, right? TVs and movies tend to depict tsunamis as apocalyptic sized curling waves, similar to what was shown on this TV show, Fox 9/11 in Santa Monica. In reality, every tsunami is unique. Some can get quite large, but most are small. Tsunamis may look like a sloping wall of water or a river in flood, and they're often choked with debris. Next. But a tsunami could also look like what we saw in that video, right? So it could look like a bathtub filling up with water as it flooded the parking lot in Santa Cruz here, shown in this video. Or if you click on the next video there, it could be strong tsunami-induced currents. It doesn't look like much from standing on shore, but those currents are very strong and they have a long duration. So that tsunami will continue for many hours in that harbor. Next. And can you surf a tsunami? No, you can't surf a tsunami, nor would you want to. Tsunamis have no face to surf like a regular ocean wave, and they're usually filled with dangerous debris, right? In this video shown here, you can see that there's swirling currents and dangerous conditions during the tsunami advisory, and there's a surf competition that was held here. This is a high school group of kids here that were caught in the advisory. Luckily, they were able to get out without issue. That wasn't said, the case for others who went out to try and surf during the event, as in San Francisco. So don't put yourself at risk by trying to surf a tsunami, and don't put other first responders at risk trying to rescue you. It's better to go and take a hike on shore during a tsunami advisory or warning. Next. Tsunamis can be generated in any large body of water. They can strike any coastal area all around the world. Certain coastal areas are particularly vulnerable to tsunami, include beaches, bays, lagoons, harbors, and coastal rivers, all the low-lying areas. California can be impacted by local and distant tsunamis. Next. Yvette hit on this already, but it's an important topic I think that we should talk about again, because it's really important for those that live or work or visit the coast. You should get to know these two types of warnings as they're both important. One is an official tsunami warning issued from the National Tsunami Warning Center in Palmer, Alaska. You may also get a warning from local officials. The other type of warning are natural tsunami warning signs. Natural warning signs are if you feel a strong or long earthquake, hear a loud roar from the ocean, or see a sudden rise or fall of the ocean. Any one of these may indicate danger. Don't wait for all three warning signs. You may not get both an official and a natural warning, so be prepared to respond immediately to whichever you receive first. So what's
your slides are on a timer now, so they're changing on their own.
No worries.
Okay.
I'll roll with it. You know, what's the difference between a local and distant tsunami? A distant tsunami, also referred to as a far field or teletsunami, is generated by an earthquake from a faraway source, sometimes on the other side of the ocean, like Tonga was. The earthquake will not be felt, but there will be time to issue and respond to official notifications. Distant tsunamis could arrive in 5 to 13 hours, depending on where they originate. The worst case scenario for the Central Coast is from the eastern Aleutian Islands in Alaska. It would take 4 to 5 hours for a tsunami to arrive along the Central Coast, which provides everyone enough time to evacuate by foot. We don't recommend evacuating by car, as you could easily get stuck in a traffic jam. So for the local source, or local tsunami, is from a nearby source and may arrive in less than an hour or sometimes in minutes. With a short amount of arrival time, it's important for you to know how to recognize and respond to a natural tsunami warning sign. Remember, the felt earthquake will be your warning. If a tsunami is generated, it should arrive in minutes and there'll be no time for an official warning. So just go to high ground or inland as soon as possible. Next. I hope you discovered some new information today that you can put in your own virtual tsunami toolbox for Tsunami Preparedness Week this year. Check out the state tsunami website for more information about your tsunami hazard map. And remember that the California Tsunami Program is your source for tsunami science. Thanks for your attention today. And if you have any questions, please email us. We love to talk tsunami. Thanks everyone, and remember to be safe.
Awesome. Thank you, Nick. Really appreciate that. A lot of great information. I loved all the videos as well. It really helps imagine what it would really look like. So again, if you do have questions right now for Nick or for Yvette, please use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. I believe we've got a couple of questions already in there. So please don't use the chat, use the Q&A feature if you can. But Sharon, do we have any questions we want to share with the group?
Sure, we do. We have one from Brian. How did the tsunami damage dollar amount in California differ between this event and the 2011 Tohoku event?
So during Tohoku, we had about $100 million damage to our coast in total. During this past Tonga event, we had about $8 to $10 million of damage, and mostly to our harbor and marina areas.
Absolutely right. The other interesting fact too that's different from this Tonga event, from the 2011 event, is 2011, even though it was a larger event, it occurred at low tide. So there wasn't as much on land flooding. Whereas this Tonga event was a smaller event, but happened to coincide at peak tides.
Thank you. We have a question from Richard. Does the Tsunami Warning Center include surge arrival time in relation to tides in their decision between an advisory or warning? In hindsight, would a warning may have been more appropriate?
So for this particular event, we would not have issued a warning level of alert messaging for this because the way they measured is based on wave height and then potential flooding onto land. So in taking a look at those impacts, it was well within the advisory level for this particular incident. So I don't know, Nick, if you want to talk at all about how they do the calculations and what's included in that.
Yeah, without getting in the weeds too much, the National Tsunami Warning Center does provide forecasted wave amplitudes when they have that information available. They didn't have it available for this last event because it wasn't a seismic source. It wasn't an earthquake generated source. It was a volcanic source. Typically, though, we'll have that information. And then we could run it through our own computer model that takes into account local sea state conditions like tides, storm surge, or any geographic locations that just typically get hit a bit harder, like have their tsunami hotspots, so to speak. And that's the total water elevation that we provide to our county warning partners. And Cal OES helps with that, and so does the National Weather Service.
And one thing to keep in mind too, that although this was an advisory level event and we don't typically call for evacuations during these level events, as Nick mentioned earlier, and I alluded to a little bit too, if you're in a marina or harbor area, if you're on a boat, as you saw in both of our videos, it's a pretty dangerous place to be even during an advisory level event. And so we really urge folks to get out of the water completely, whether you're on a boat, on a surfboard, swimming, whatever. We really encourage everyone to get out of the water and away from the coastal area during an advisory level event. Because again, the water conditions are still very hazardous, very dangerous. And even once that advisory level event is canceled, as it was by the Tsunami Warning Center at 12:30 Sunday morning, that just means that there's no longer advisory level currents and waves. However, there are still dangerous currents and waves in those coastal areas, and it still may not be safe to navigate in the water, even on a boat. So really important things to think about, and really important to stay out of the water until your local officials tell folks it's safe to return to that area.
We have a question from Keith. If people can't evacuate, can they go up onto multi-story buildings?
So here's the thing with that is we consider multi-story buildings as a refuge of last resort. We really want people to move out of the area for a couple different reasons. First of all, we don't know the integrity of the building. So unless a structural engineer has looked at the building and say, yes, this can withstand tsunami surges and debris impacts. Because keep in mind, with these water surges, if there's enough water depth, you could have vehicles and boats and all kinds of stuff being carried with the water and ramming into buildings. In addition to that, if you have water surging on land, that's going to knock out power, utilities, and then you're going to have people basically stranded in the top floors of buildings that may not have access to water, to food, and we don't know what that duration is going to be until help can get to them. So if there is time to evacuate, and as Nick talked about, we have these different distant source events that you have several hours, we encourage people to evacuate out of the area. That is the best solution for these types of events, is to follow the guidance, follow local officials' warnings, heed those warnings, and evacuate out of the area.
Just quickly, we have a question from Sharon. She lives 15 miles south of Santa Cruz, and the elevation of the community that she lives in is 33 feet above sea level. There's a moderately sized river directly connected to the ocean with several connected tributaries. During rain years, you can count on these smaller waterways flooding. I've lived here 51 years, and I think I've seen one tsunami evacuation sign in town. However, Santa Cruz does have many more. How do we address this issue for this town or area?
Well, I could just tell you that like right now, we're in the process of updating our tsunami hazard area maps for Santa Cruz. So I'll be doing the lead mapping for that county. We have a draft map available, but it needs to go through a highly vetted process, working with local officials. That'll be done this summer. And then Yvette, if you want to talk about signage or anything too.
Sure, yeah. So as a part of that process, our program partners with Nick and his program, and we go out in the field with them. So as the maps are updated and we identify where those new hazard area boundaries are, we can take a look at the signage that's currently in place and determine if A, either the signs need to be moved, or B, if we need to add additional signage just to make sure that that area is clearly identified. So as we take a look around your community, because we will do the entire coastal area of Santa Cruz County, Nick's already mapped it all. So we do know where this new hazard area boundaries are going to be. We will work with those local officials to get any signage that's needed, and we actually get those for them and ship them to them, and then they can get those installed. So we'll work with them if additional signage is needed in your area to make sure that they have those resources.
Terrific. Just a quick question from David. Is there a shelf that runs along portions of the California coast that can create a large tsunami? Would there be any warning at all for some of these possible underwater landslide sites?
That's a great question, David. And you know what? We are aware that there is a potential local source offshore for these underwater landslides that could be tsunamigenic. And by that, I mean, they could create a tsunami. We are actually in the process of working with top researchers to address this. And in the next round of tsunami hazard maps that will come out, we'll have these landslides incorporated into the new hazard area maps. Oh, and I should touch on too, how do you know if one's gonna occur? Well, again, think back to the natural tsunami warning signs, right? You wanna, if you feel the earthquake, that is your natural tsunami warning sign. Don't wait for an official warning, just head to high ground or inland as soon as you're able to do so.
Nick, this is Mark. There's a question in the chat that I have a question. I think it's important too, that when you talk about the wave height, sometimes people don't take 2 or 3 feet seriously in the public. And I know that often when we hear about, when the waves are big just because of a storm or where they are surfable normal waves, they talk about the wave height is 4 to 5 feet, and that doesn't cause all the damage we're talking about. Yet when the tsunamis coming, they're also talking about the wave height being 2 to 3 or 4 to 5 feet, and yet it's a very different type of wave height. It's really that surge moving in that's that height. Is there a plan to somehow better differentiate that in the messaging? It seems like, as is asked by Mary Elena, that does lead to confusion.
Yeah, that was one thing that was we found out from just listening to Twitter feeds and talking to folks, is that the messaging can be confusing if you don't understand tsunami waves, right? Tsunami waves are much different than just regular surfing waves, right? Ocean waves. You hear about large storm surges coming in of 4 to 6 feet, right? And then you hear this, oh, there's a tsunami advisory of 1 to 3 feet. Oh, that's nothing. In reality, though, even a 1 foot tsunami can produce significantly strong surges and potentially damaging situations along beaches and in harbors, because it has to do with the tsunami wavelength. And someone in the question was asking about that earlier, about wave height, and I think it was wave period or duration they were mentioning. Tsunamis have a really long wave period or wavelength, and that makes a big difference. A 1 foot wavelength of a couple kilometers, it's not just a quick wave that splashes up on the beach. This is going to be 1 foot of a sudden rise in sea level, and that's going to push far inland. So
And I think people need to be clear too that, and I think it's kind of a mistitled thing, is that a tsunami is a surge of the full column of water. It's not a wave like you see when you go to the beach every day and you've got those little wind waves. So they call it tsunami waves, but it's really a surge of that water, and it's incredibly strong, and it only takes a few inches to knock a person off their feet. They're very powerful.
So that's an educational thing that we're trying to message to people, is that, you know, tsunami waves are much different than, you know, wind waves. And so that's an educational aspect that we're trying to focus on and do better with our messaging.
Maybe the last question in the Q&A, Sharon?
The last question is from Stephen. Can tsunami events deliver rising water in multiple events over time? How long can the wave action recur?
So if you look at recent tsunami events, this past Tonga event was 28.5 hours. The 2011 Tohoku tsunami lasted over 36 hours. So tsunamis can last for a couple days. And it's also important to note that the waves may not be consistently high. They may decrease for a period of time and then increase again. So it may for a while look like it's over, but that could be a little bit deceiving because they can surge and get stronger and larger again. In looking at the data that we collected after Tonga, the initial arrival time for the waves was between 7 and 7:30 on our Central Coast area. And some of the peak wave heights did not occur until 9, 10 o'clock in the morning. So it's going to occur for several hours. And so it's really important to stay vigilant and stay connected to officials and make sure that folks are staying out of the area for the entire duration of the event, which could be a couple days.
These are all great questions, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Great, thank you so much.
All right, I think if we're at the end of our question and answer period, I think we're at the end of our session for today. A huge thank you to Nick and to Yvette for tons of great information, for answering everyone's questions. Just a quick plug for getting more involved with ECA at the end of today. There are lots of ways you can get involved. We mentioned some committees earlier, lots of different topics we're focused on, lots more sessions like this planned for the future. So please check out earthquakecountry.org. You can follow us on Twitter. There's also the survey link at the bottom of the page. So if you could let us know how you found today's session, we really would appreciate that feedback. So please don't hesitate to reach out, and we hope to see you around soon. Thanks so much, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.